Just going to provide a few introductory remarks to frame us in terms of our time together today. Dr. Martin Luther King provided us with a diagnosis of the triple societal scourge of militarism and materialism and racism that transcends time as they are ever present today. Dr. King also gave us the vision of the beloved community, a specter of hope in the midst of despair. For many, these hours, these days, these times seem dark as we see the devastating evidence of the triplet all around us. The menace seems to be surging with the viral outbreak of Trumpism, characterized by the emboldened hate mongers and the further institutionalization of bigotry, of xenophobia, of Islamophobia, of misogyny, and so much more. For example, we have these cabinet appointments, each more outrageous than the last. In an official work memo on Friday, I likened the appointment of Scott Pruitt as the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency to putting Satan in charge of the Office of Faith-Based Affairs. These ridiculous appointments, combined with the takeover of Congress, are then advancing the corresponding rollback of protectionist policies and regulations. And now the strengthened proliferation of the war on other nations, the war on women, the war on Muslims, the war on our communities of color, the war on indigenous people, the war on black men, and so much more is assailing our society. We see militarism as a tool of imperialism, and the price is paid by the children of Aleppo, the women in Sudan, the families in Iraq, and the neighborhoods of Afghanistan. We see militarism in the United States as with the National Guard taking over of Baltimore, Maryland, right down the street, as people rose up to cry out against yet another killing of an unarmed African-American man and were met with tanks and riot gear. And then we saw the armed assaults by water cannons, by tear gas, by concussion grenades and pellet guns on our relatives, the water defenders at Standing Rock, when they were only seeking to peacefully protect sacred land, burial grounds, and drinking water. Water is life. We see materialism in the foundation of many of these very wars, too often fought over riches with the guise of defending liberty or maintaining security or protecting freedom, when in fact the reckless extraction is to maintain lifestyles of excess. It also means drilling that is destroying our seas, fracking that is defiling our land, and burning which is poisoning our air. And one of the many costs we pay is the proliferation of climate change, with NOAA set to announce on this coming Wednesday that 2016 is the third year in a row as the hottest year on record. All around, we've continued to experience the weather impacts, with just in the past few weeks we've had freak ice storms, sub-zero temperatures, record heat in Florida, and torrential downpours flooding the West, all while the seas continue to rise, displacing communities from Louisiana to Benin. Mother Earth will not yield to the assaults by corporate greed. We see racism everywhere, and we see the intersections with both militarism and materialism. Materialism is what brought me into existence, as my ancestors were brought to this hemisphere as stolen commodities in the hulls of ships to be used for cheap labor. People of color are still being used for cheap labor today, while being systematically segregated from the bounty of resources we have created, from redlining to modern-day gentrification, from captured lands from our indigenous relatives to eminent domain. These are the same practices with new names. It is our same communities that are most likely to be dumped on and contaminated by the factories and the power plants and the landfills for the production and disposal of those very excesses of materialism. And it is communities of color that most often pay the price for the wealth building of others, resulting in our communities often being called sacrifice zones, as we give up our very lives to the cancers, to the asthma attacks, to the heart disease associated with pollution. We are too often denied the most basic of human rights to clean air, clean water, uncontaminated land, or even the right to walk down the street without being profiled, brutalized, and in many cases killed in cold blood. Black lives matter. But at the same time, we see the emergence of Dr. King's vision of the beloved community in the resistance, in the organizing, and in the rise of fierce radical love. We see beloved communities in the surge of sanctuary schools, sanctuary cities, and sanctuary states, offering refuge to those being further pushed to the margins as they are targeted by oppressive policymaking and practices. These sanctuaries declare safe spaces where we are all welcomed and protected, and this is a blessing. We see beloved community in the neighborhoods and the municipalities municipalities across the country that are leading a just transition from extraction and domination to cooperation and resilience by growing their own food, generating their own clean energy, recycling their waste, ensuring public access to clean water, developing cooperative affordable housing and land ownership, all with a view towards resilient, liberated spaces where all lives matter and all rights are honored. We see beloved community in the movements that are beginning to awaken to the need to be explicitly anti-oppressive and anti-racist. Slowly, people in the movements are waking up to the fact that they can't just adopt the Jemez principles and claim in word to be anti-oppressive. We must apply intentionality and make deeper, invested commitments to transformative anti-oppression in order to actualize the principles that we espouse. We see beloved community in the leadership of the Standing Rock Sioux and so many others who have come before them and will come after in resisting and defending indigenous rights and defending sacred earth against the scourge of reckless greed. We see beloved communities in the fierce, fabulous, nasty women who are gearing up to gather next Saturday, just a few blocks away, to resist a misogynist agenda. We see them uniting around a vision for equal rights for women, and we see them shining a light for girls to follow to ensure that they know that beauty comes from within and that they have the power to achieve their dreams. We see beloved communities in the random acts of kindness that we hear about every day, whether it's someone paying for someone's meter, offering someone shelter, giving a stranger a hug when they need it, or just yesterday when I was in an elevator with a woman with a baby, a fellow started to get in, and then he backed out and said, I have a cold and I don't want to give it to the baby. Every act of kindness, big or small, adds up. Finally, we see beloved community in all of you who are all gathered here today this week and with us today as people of many faiths or just people of deep consciousness and compassion, all with a common aim and a common commitment to push back against oppressive forces and push forward with progressive action. So in today's services, we will hear from amazing speakers joining us from mosques, temples, churches, tribes, and from the front lines of struggle. They will share their perspectives, experiences, and analyses on whatever aspects they choose to highlight around the theme of the triplets of militarism, materialism, and racism, as well as their visions of the beloved community. Interspersed throughout in song, led by Lucy and Robert, we will all lift our voices in a joyous harmony of tenors, altos, basses, sopranos, and falsettos, each of which brings to the rich and diverse tapestry of the movement. It represents the unique gifts that we bring to the rich tapestry of the movement. Then, as we sometimes must, we'll take it to the streets and march to the White House, where we lift up our voices in speaking truth to power. For forward together, not one step back. With love, we will resist. So, thank you.